Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So for the video this week, I actually started off by going back to my Friday page from the last video. I had a few other things to print out, so I printed out those little shots from the Florida project and just placed them right onto the page. I just have a normal printer, run-of-the-mill printer from college, and I use it with normal printer paper. I think I use the printer settings color fine when I print these, so the colors themselves don't always end up super accurate as to what I see on my laptop. They always end up a bit darker. With the Florida project pictures, the coloring in the movie is so unique that it just wasn't, it's really not accurately represented in any printouts you can make of any of the film stills, at least not on just a normal printer. I'm sure if you had photo paper and you were using like a really advanced printer, it would work, but these pictures ended up a little muddy, but it's okay for the purposes just of my day-to-day journal. For my Monday spread, I just wanted to use a bunch of stickers that have been sitting around. I think I said in the last video that I'm trying to just like almost use everything up so that I can justify owning them at all. I just will tend to pick out like a color theme and then try to match everything to that color. Sometimes when I write out the titles in the bubble letters, I'll go back in with a white gel pen and add a little bit of highlight to the letters. The one I'm using here is the Jelly Roll 10, and it's pretty good. The ink consistency, it kind of feels like whiteout, so you can't use it exactly like a normal pen. Every time I use it, I'm just kind of like dabbing and lifting it over and over again, and it ends up drying a bit paler and not as pigmented as it looks when you first use it. I'm still looking for like a really pigmented white pen or marker, like a true white pen, but this is pretty good just as like a cheap normal option for like a daily journal page. So on Monday, I spent a lot of time editing the YouTube video. Every time that I think I'm done with the video and I go back in to make the last few tweaks, I always end up staying in there for like a few more hours just because I've found something that looks weird or I have forgotten to add text or drop shadows or something or other. Monday night, I went in to make like my last look at 5. And then was sitting in Premiere for another 2 hours, just like moving the voiceover around, which I'm sure I'll do with this video. But thankfully, work was pretty light. I am going to a wedding in June, and I've finally found the dresses I'm gonna wear. So I got those in, and they fit, which was a relief. This is actually the first wedding I'm attending, kind of. I went to a high school friend's parents' second wedding when I was in 12th grade. But this is the first time that like one of my peers is getting married, and she actually is a friend from high school, getting married to her high school sweetheart, so very excited. We didn't have like a class reunion or anything because I believe 5-year would have fallen during COVID, but this is kind of like a mock high school reunion for us. And it'll be happening in our hometown too. My parents very recently moved out of our hometown, so any chance I get to go back and spend a bit more time there is always really nice. Especially in the summer too. It's just really nostalgic to be able to go back and see my old neighborhood and my friends that still live in the area. On Tuesday and Wednesday, I had my phone flipped opposite of how it usually is in the tripod, and my head kept popping into the frame, so I've cropped these a bit weird so that it's not as distracting to see me constantly going in and out of frame, but just so you know, that's why the cropping is a bit weird on these. So on Tuesday, I finished Every Little Breath, and I really liked it. I talked a lot about audiobooks and my preference for audiobooks in the last video, and how I felt I was becoming too familiar with Ruth Ware. This author, Carrie Beavis, I've really enjoyed, only read 2 so far, but really enjoyed both of them so far. It was one of those moments where I was listening to it for hours on end and like didn't want to do anything else or focus on anything else. So when I took like my lunch hour, I just made my food and then was sitting in silence with headphones on the couch. Like, probably looked so bizarre to walk into, but I just really, really was engaged with what was going on. I really wanted to watch a found footage horror movie, so my roommate and I watched Hell House LLC from 2015. It was pretty good. I just like found footage horror films a lot. It's my favorite subgenre of horror movies. I know some people really don't like it. They don't like the shaky cam, and they don't like how it kind of feels and looks a little cheap. And there is some pretty bad found footage out there. Hell House was okay. It was fun. It felt like a novel-ish concept. It's a bunch of friends who create haunted houses, and they're putting up a haunted house out in rural upstate New York, I believe, and there just are strange things happening in the abandoned hotel that they're using for the haunted house. Like very typical like found footage tropes of things getting moved and jump scares, like when you whip a camera around a corner. But I liked it. It's just fun to me. I feel like found footage movies don't always have that like kind of heavy, stressful, oppressive feeling that some really serious horror movies have. I like the way that they use suspense without the use of music. Like there's no creepy like horror movie score behind it, so it's kind of just up to you to feel that suspense for yourself when you're looking at a very long camera shot. And I like that it's something that really anyone could do if they had a camera. So I feel like it really levels the playing field for some really good low budget horror to take place. So on Wednesday, kind of spurred on by us watching the movie the previous night, we watched another found footage horror movie, As Above, So Below. I think this one's pretty well known, and it was pretty creepy. This one takes place in the catacombs of Paris. It was definitely a bit more psychological, I guess, is the way I would describe it. There's like more like mental trauma things that are feeding into the horrors that you encounter in the movie. I think it's one that probably becomes more apparent on rewatches when you know the characters a bit better. Hell House seemed like pretty straightforward, like we ended up somewhere that was haunted and that's why we're being haunted, whereas As Above, So Below had to do with like the baggage that the characters were bringing with them. I like this one as well. My roommate and I were laughing about it because it had a lot of similarities to National Treasure. At the very beginning of the movie, it's actually the scenes that I used for this printout. They discovered that there is a map on the back of Nicholas Flamel's tombstone, so they have to take the plaque off the tombstone and put like lime or like cleaning supplies on the back and then use a match. So it reminded me a lot of the scene in National Treasure when they have to reveal the map on the back of the Declaration with lemon juice and heat. It felt exactly like that. The beats were so similar. Yeah, National Treasure would be super similar to As Above, So Below if after they stole the Declaration of Independence, they encountered demons of their own making underneath Trinity Church at the end of the movie. But they don't. But either way, both are very enjoyable movies. So on Thursday, we had a torrential downpour in New York. We were actually predicted hail. I don't think that happened. I hope it didn't. I had a dance class pretty early, and I was racing to class, watching the sky above me just getting darker and darker and darker. And by the time I had changed and gotten into the studio, it looked as if I was there at like 8 p.m. It was so dark. And one of the women who work at the front desk came in while I was stretching, and she was like, oh, there's trash floating down the street in the water because it had gotten so bad. And everyone just came in like 10-15 minutes late, soaked to the bone. Our teacher came in. She was like, sorry. Like there was just no way for me to get here earlier. But thankfully by the time that we were let out, it was a completely normal day. And I do think it cooled us off for a few days. So that was worth it in my opinion. Here I'm using my never-ending supply of plant stickers. Someone commented on the last video and said that they're washi stickers, which makes a lot of sense now that I'm thinking about it, because it is like the exact same texture. So now I'm gonna have to get more, I guess, now that I know what they're called. I just really love the look of them. It feels like they just blend exceptionally well into the hobonichi paper, the TRP, as we all know. Wednesday and Thursday are our record nights, so I worked until 9 p.m.-ish on Wednesday and Thursday, which I don't really mind. It's just nice to get stuff checked off of this really long list that we are referring to when we do records. It makes me feel like we're making a lot of progress. So usually we do 2 records every other week. So we'll do a record on Wednesday and a record on Thursday. So this Thursday was our second night of records. So we record all the new material for a new episode, and then we go back and we get pickups, which are lines that have been edited or changed, or the director just wants a different read on a line, wants something more energetic or more sad or what have you. So that was what I did for most of the night on Thursday. They go a bit longer, they go until 9 because half the team is on West Coast time, but I enjoy getting everything checked off of the list, especially as we're reaching the end of a season. So we're working hard to make sure that we're getting all the pickups we need before we start to get into the final delivery format of the episodes that we're working on. That sounds incomprehensible. I don't do a great job of explaining it. Basically, we want to get the pickups before we have to mix the audio for each episode. On Friday, I spent a lot of the day listening to Penance, which was the book I started right after Every Little Breath. Penance was recommended to me by a friend. I take her recommendations very seriously because she really knows what kind of stuff I'm into. At the time of recording this, I have finished the book and I loved it. It's definitely in my top 5 for what I've read/listened to this year. It is a meta novel. So the book itself is written by a fictional journalist in the world of Penance. He's writing a book about a murder a decade after it's happened. It's him conducting interviews with family and friends of the victims or the perpetrators, and they do a really great job of selecting the different narrators for different sections of the book. It is mainly narrated by the primary narrator, whose name I'm going to look up and put on screen. He does most of the narration, but there are sections that are written by the perpetrators, and it's their own words. So whenever those come up in the book, it's narrated by a new woman. And I think having the different accents, especially for someone who's not from the UK, it just adds a different level to it, because I know with people that are from the UK, there are lots of stereotypes that go along with different accents, but when they're just described in a book, I'm not obviously not familiar with them, so I don't always know what they're supposed to sound like. So having these girls doing these accents just adds another layer to the characterization, and it's very different from these other books in the similar genre that I've been reading, because obviously it's almost presented as a documentary piece and it's after the fact. There's no mystery to it. It's really just digging in deep into the character of these girls and making them truly feel like real people. The author is only 30 years old. She's incredibly young to have written this, but that means that she really has a finger on the pulse of kind of online social media Tumblr language, which is used a lot in this book. There are moments where conversations are happening in a Discord server, or there's text posts from Tumblr, and in the audiobook they're just read out by the narrator stating the username and then reading the text. I don't know if in the physical book these are represented by images. Like I don't know if there's, for example, a screenshot of a fake Discord conversation that's placed right into the book and it looks like an actual Discord conversation, or if it's just still the same text as the rest of the body of the work. It would be really interesting if it has this kind of like printed out look. I don't think it does. I think it is all just like normal text, and that's why I feel like I didn't lose out on much by not reading it in physical form. I actually feel like I gained a lot, because there is one part where the author of the fake book actually says, this happened then and I read about it in the newspaper and now you're here listening to me. So it almost felt like, unless they changed that for the audiobook version, but it did feel almost like I was supposed to be listening to it in that moment. It felt like I was listening to like a real documentary podcast when he said that. So I really appreciated it. It said it was an unabridged version. It was just whatever version is available on Libby. I really recommend it as like kind of a study of the true crime obsession and the way that we interact with crimes in the real world and the way we interact with the perpetrators and victims, especially how teenagers react to it. I just think it was really impressive how accurately she represented a lot of that world. And it makes sense because she is so young. I decided to use the blue ink in the Hobonichi tricolor pen that they give us with each year. I'm not really used to writing with it, so my handwriting is a little bit more jagged with the pen. My handwriting in general is something that I struggle with, especially as you get later in the year and you get that bulky buildup on one side of your journal. I have like a really hard time writing once one side is super lopsided. And it doesn't feel like my handwriting is getting any better as I get older. I actually think it's getting worse. So I'm trying to combat that by finding the right pen for me. As much as I love the Hobonichi tricolor pen, for some reason, like, it just isn't as comfortable in my hand, and I was kind of taking a risk by doing a spread with it, and it backfired. Because I feel like my handwriting is even like messier than usual for that page. I really would like to work on my handwriting. It's like my New Year's resolution every year. Just writing a lot is not enough. I think you have to do like very concentrated practice in order to improve, so maybe that is something I will start looking into. So I think learning to write neatly within a grid instead of a line, I'm not 100% there yet. Okay, so that was another week in my Hobonichi. It was really fun again to film these daily spreads, so I hope you've enjoyed, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!